The explosion shook Cathara Station so hard that Princess Velithsur and I fell against the wall. Alarms screamed through the corridors. Red lights flashed everywhere. She could hear the sounds of weapons firing somewhere close. "Your Highness, we must move," said her guard captain, Torvis. His blue skin had turned pale with fear. "The Zorvith have breached the outer sections." Velith pushed herself up and tried to stay calm. She was the crown princess of the Valdorian Empire. She could not show fear, even when her hearts were beating too fast. "Where are the evacuation ships?" she asked. "The docking bays are cut off. The Zorvith control the main corridors." This was supposed to be a simple diplomatic visit. Cathara Station was neutral ground where different species came to trade and talk. No one attacked neutral stations. But the Zorvith Collective did not follow the old rules anymore. Velith and her small group of guards moved through the damaged hallways. Other aliens ran past them, crying and screaming. Some were injured. The smell of smoke and burning metal filled the air. They turned a corner and stopped. 3 Zorvith soldiers stood in their path. The enemy soldiers were tall and covered in dark armor. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Torvis raised his weapon, but he was not fast enough. A blast of plasma hit him in the chest. He fell without a sound. Velith backed away as the Zorvith moved toward her. She had no weapon. She had no way to fight. This was how she would die, alone on a burning station far from home. Then she heard something. It was a sound she had never heard before. A human war cry. 5 soldiers in gray armor came around the corner behind the Zorvith. They moved fast and worked together like they shared one mind. Their weapons fired in perfect rhythm. 2 Zorvith fell immediately. The third turned to fight but took 3 shots to the chest. It was over in seconds. The lead human soldier ran to Velith. His helmet visor was cracked, and she could see part of his face. He had brown eyes and a strong jaw covered in dirt and sweat. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was calm even though battle still raged around them. "No," Velith managed to say. "But my guards." The soldier looked at Torvis and the other fallen Valdorians. His expression showed genuine sadness. "I am sorry. We got here as fast as we could." Sergeant Carter, another human, called out. "We have more hostiles incoming from Section 7. The sergeant nodded. "Copy that?" "Price, Torres, take point. We are getting the princess out of here." He turned back to Velith. "Stay close to me. We will get you to safety." They moved through the station. Velith had heard stories about human soldiers, but she had never seen them fight before. Other species called humans reckless and emotional. They said humans were too young and too primitive to matter in galactic affairs. Those species were wrong. The humans fought like nothing she had ever seen. They did not retreat when the odds were bad. They did not hesitate when danger appeared. They protected each other, and they protected her, a stranger from another world. They reached a junction where 2 corridors met. A large group of Zorvith blocked the path to the emergency docking bay. There were too many of them. "We cannot get through," one of the human soldiers said. "There are at least 15 of them." Sergeant Carter studied the situation for a moment. Then he turned to his team. "Price, take the princess through the maintenance tunnels. They connect to Bay 4. I will draw their attention." "Sergeant, that is suicide," the female soldier named Price said. "Maybe, maybe not. But we did not come all this way to fail." He looked at Velith. "You will be safe with my team. I promise." Before anyone could argue, he stepped out into the open and started firing. The Zorvith turned their attention to him. He ran along the corridor, pulling their fire away from the junction. "Move!" Price ordered. They ran into the maintenance tunnels. Velith looked back once and saw Sergeant Carter still fighting, still drawing enemy fire. A plasma bolt hit his shoulder. He stumbled, but kept moving, kept shooting. The tunnels were dark and narrow. Bailiff could barely breathe. She kept thinking about the human sergeant, wondering if he was still alive. They emerged in Docking Bay 4. An evacuation ship was waiting. Other survivors were already boarding. Price pushed Valeth toward the ramp. "Go, Your Highness. Get on the ship. What about your sergeant?" Price's jaw tightened. "He will find his own way out. He always does." Valeth boarded the ship. She sat by a window and watched the station burn. She thought about the human who had saved her life. A man who threw himself into danger for someone he did not even know. The ship was about to leave when a figure appeared at the edge of the docking bay. It was Sergeant Carter. He was limping, and his armor was damaged in many places. But he was alive. He made it to the ship just before the doors closed. He collapsed onto a seat across from Valeth. His face was covered in blood and soot, but he managed a small smile. "Told you I would get you to safety," he said. Valeth stared at him. Something about his eyes was familiar. Something about his smile made her heart ache with a memory she could not name. "Thank you," she said. "You risked your life for me. Why?" He thought about the question for a moment. "My grandmother used to say we should always protect those who cannot protect themselves. I guess I never forgot that." Valeth felt like the world had stopped moving. She had heard those words before. A long time ago, on a planet called Earth, a small human boy had said the same thing to her. It was impossible. It could not be him, but those brown eyes looked at her with the same kindness she remembered from her childhood. The same warmth she had never found anywhere else in the galaxy. She wanted to ask him, wanted to know the truth. But the words would not come. She just sat there, looking at the man who had saved her life, wondering if the universe had finally brought her back to the one friend she had never forgotten. 2 days had passed since the attack on Kethra Station. Princess Valeth stood by the window of her quarters on the Coalition flagship Meridian, looking out at the stars. She could not stop thinking about the human soldier. Those words kept playing in her mind. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. It was what Danny used to say when they were children. But Danny was just a boy she knew on Earth 20 years ago. He could not be the same person as Sergeant Daniel Carter, could he? Valeth walked to her communication terminal and made a request. She asked for the service record of Sergeant Daniel Carter, claiming she wanted to formally thank him for his bravery. The Coalition was happy to send the information. She read the file slowly. Daniel Carter was born in a small town in Colorado, near a place called Fort Ridge. He grew up close to a classified research installation. The dates matched perfectly. That installation was where her father had brought her during secret treaty negotiations with Earth's government. She had been just 8 years old in human terms. Her father made her wear a device that changed her appearance to look human. She attended a local school while her father worked on the treaty. The human children were strange to her at first. They laughed too loud and played too rough. She did not understand their games or their jokes. But one boy was different. His name was Danny. He had brown eyes and a kind smile. He saw that she was lonely and confused, and he became her friend. He did not care that she was awkward or that she said strange things. He just wanted to play with her and make her laugh. They spent 3 months together. They explored the creek behind the facility. They climbed the old oak tree near the school. They made promises that only children make, promises to stay friends forever. Then one night, her father came to her room with fear in his eyes. Someone had discovered her true identity. They had to leave immediately. There was no time to say goodbye. She never saw Danny again. Valeth closed the file and let out a long breath. It had to be him. The age was right. The location was right. Even the way he smiled was the same. She needed to know for certain. On another deck of the Meridian, Sergeant Daniel Carter sat in the medical bay while a doctor fixed his wounded shoulder. His squad mate, Corporal Megan Price, sat nearby. "You have been quiet since the rescue," Price said. "Something on your mind?" Daniel shrugged with his good shoulder. "That Valdorian princess. She reminds me of someone. Someone from Earth?" "Yeah, a girl I knew when I was a kid. Her name was Val. She lived near my hometown for a few months. We were best friends." He paused, remembering. Then one day she just disappeared. Her whole family was gone overnight. No goodbye, no explanation. I looked for her for years. Price raised an eyebrow. "You think the princess is the same person?" "I know it sounds crazy, but the way she looked at me when I said that thing about my grandmother." He shook his head. "Never mind. It is probably nothing." A message arrived on Daniel's communicator. The princess was requesting a private meeting to discuss security protocols. He found it strange but agreed to go. They met in the small conference room. Valeth was already there when he arrived. She stood by the window, her silver hair catching the starlight. She was beautiful in a way that was not quite human, with pale lavender skin and eyes that shifted between blue and violet. "Sergeant Carter," she said. "Thank you for coming." "Of course, Your Highness. How can I help?" She turned to face him. Her expression was hard to read. "I wanted to ask you some questions. About your childhood." Daniel felt his heart beat faster. "My childhood? You grew up in Colorado, near Fort Ridge." "That is correct." Valeth took a step closer. There was a creek behind the research facility, an old oak tree near the school. "Do you remember?" Daniel could not speak for a moment. How could she know about those places? He had never told anyone about them. "There was a girl," Valeth continued. Her voice was softer now. "A strange girl who did not understand human games. A girl who was afraid of dogs and did not know what ice cream was. Do you remember her?" "Val," Daniel whispered. "Her name was Val." Valeth's eyes filled with tears. "You called me Starlight because I told you I came from the stars, and you believed me. You were the only one who believed me." Daniel felt like the floor had dropped away beneath his feet. He stared at the woman in front of him and saw the little girl he had never forgotten. The girl who had been his best friend. The girl who had disappeared without a word. "It is you," he said. "It is really you. I am sorry I left without saying goodbye. I wanted to stay. I wanted to keep my promise. But my people discovered our friendship. They said it was dangerous. They made us leave in the middle of the night." Daniel took a step toward her. "I searched for you. For years, I searched. I joined the military because I thought maybe, if we ever went to space, I might find you." Before either of them could say more, an alarm began to wail throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside. "All hands to battle stations," a voice announced. "Zorvith forces detected." This is not a drill. Daniel and Valeth looked at each other. There was so much more to say, so many years to catch up on. But the universe was not going to give them that time. "We should go," Daniel said. Valeth nodded. But before they left the room, she reached out and touched his hand. Just for a moment. Just enough to let him know that this was real. "I never forgot you." "Danny," she said. "I never forgot you either." "Starlight." Then they ran toward their separate duties, carrying 20 years of memories and a promise that still needed to be kept. The Zorvith attack was pushed back, but the damage was done. Coalition scouts reported that enemy forces were gathering near Valdorian supply lines. Princess Valeth received orders from her father. She had to return home immediately to help coordinate the defense of her people. The journey would be dangerous. Zorvith raiders controlled many of the routes between Coalition space and the Valdorian Empire. Any ship carrying the princess would be a high-value target. Daniel Carter stood in the briefing room with his commanding officer, Lieutenant Nathan Cross. They were discussing the escort mission. The princess needs a security team for the voyage, Cross said. It will take 4 days through hostile territory. I need volunteers. Daniel stepped forward. My squad will do it. Cross looked at him with careful eyes. You just got out of medical, Carter. Are you sure you are fit for this? I am fine, sir. And my team knows how to handle Zorvith raiders. We proved that at Kethera. Cross nodded slowly. All right. But I am sensing something personal here. Is there anything you want to tell me? Daniel kept his face neutral. Just doing my duty, sir. The transport ship was called the Dawn Runner. It was a fast vessel with good shields, but limited weapons. Daniel brought his full squad, Corporal Megan Price, Specialist Rico Torres, and Private First Class Amy Lynn. They were some of the best soldiers in the fleet. For the first 2 days, the journey was quiet. Valith spent most of her time in her quarters, but on the second night, she came to the observation deck where Daniel was standing watch. You should be resting. Your Highness, he said. I could not sleep. She stood beside him and looked out at the stars. May I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really join the military? You said you wanted to find me. But there must have been more to it than that. Daniel thought for a moment before answering. When you left, I felt lost. You were my best friend, and you just vanished. I did not know how to deal with that. So I focused on becoming strong. I thought if I was strong enough, I could protect the people I cared about. I could make sure no one else disappeared from my life. Valith looked at him with sad eyes. I caused you pain. I am sorry. It was not your fault. You were just a child. We both were. They stood in silence for a while. Then Valith spoke again. On Valdoria, they taught me that emotions were weakness. They said my friendship with you was shameful. They punished me for it. Daniel turned to face her. Punished you? How? Isolation. Meditation. They made me repeat the teachings of our ancestors until I could recite them without feeling. Until I stopped crying when I thought about Earth. She paused. But I never truly forgot. I kept the memory of you hidden inside my heart like a secret treasure. Daniel felt anger rise in his chest. Not at Valith, but at the people who had hurt her for caring about someone. Your people are wrong, he said. Emotions are not weakness. The people we love are what give us strength. They are the reason we fight. Valith smiled softly. You sound like the same boy who stood up to the bullies on the playground. Some things never change. An alert sounded from the bridge. Torres's voice came through the communicator. Sergeant, we have contacts incoming. 4 Zorvith raiders on intercept course. Daniel and Valith ran to the bridge. Through the viewport, they could see the enemy ships approaching. They were fast and heavily armed. Can we outrun them? Daniel asked. The pilot shook her head. They are faster than us. They will catch us in 10 minutes. Then we fight. Daniel turned to his squad. Price, Torres, man the gun turrets. Lynn, get the princess to the escape pods and prepare for emergency launch. No, Valith said firmly. I will not run while you die for me. Your Highness, your life is more important than any of ours. No life is more important than another. That is something humans taught me a long time ago. She looked at him with determination. I stay. There was no time to argue. The Zorvith ships opened fire. The Dawn Runner shook with the impact of plasma bolts against the shields. The battle was chaos. The human gunners fought hard, taking down one raider with precise shots. But the other 3 kept coming. The shields were failing. A Zorvith boarding pod slammed into the side of the ship. Enemy soldiers poured through the breach. Daniel and his squad met them with gunfire and Fury. Price took a hit to the leg but kept shooting from the floor. Taurus fought hand-to-hand with a Zorvith, twice his size, and won. Lin protected the bridge entrance with deadly accuracy. Daniel fought his way toward the breach, cutting down enemies with every step. A Zorvith commander faced him, a massive warrior with a blade that hummed with energy. They fought for what felt like hours, but was probably just minutes. Daniel was faster, but the Zorvith was stronger. A blow sent Daniel flying against the wall. His weapon skidded away. The commander raised his blade to finish the job. Then a blast of energy hit the commander from behind. He fell forward dead. Valith stood there holding a weapon she had taken from a fallen Zorvith soldier. Her hands were shaking, but her aim had been perfect. Daniel looked at her with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you. Now we are even," she said. With their commander dead, the remaining Zorvith lost their courage. They retreated to their ships and fled. The Dawn Runner was damaged, but still flying. In the aftermath, the squad tended to their wounds. Vela sat beside Daniel as a medic wrapped his ribs. "Your people are remarkable," she said quietly. "You fight like you have nothing to lose, but everything to protect." Daniel winced as the medic worked. "That is because we do. Every single one of us has someone waiting at home. Someone we want to see again." Valith was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I would like to be someone worth fighting for." "For you?" Daniel looked into her eyes. Those eyes that had haunted his dreams for 20 years. "You already are, Starlight. You always were." The Voldorian homeworld was beautiful. Great cities of crystal and silver stretched across mountains that touched the clouds. Ships moved through the sky like flocks of metal birds. Everything was clean and perfect, and ancient. Daniel Carter stood on the landing platform and felt very small. "Impressive, is it not?" Vela said, standing beside him. "It is something else. I grew up in a town with 2,000 people. This is a little different." Valith smiled. "You will do fine. Just be yourself." They were taken to the royal palace, a structure so large it made the coalition flagship look like a toy. Guards in ceremonial armor lined every hallway. Servants bowed as Valith passed. She had become someone else here, someone regal and distant. But when she looked at Daniel, her eyes still held that warmth he remembered from childhood. The High Council met in a chamber at the heart of the palace. 12 Valdorian elders sat in a circle of floating thrones. At the center stood the Emperor himself, Valith's father. He was tall and imposing, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. Valith gave her report. She told him about the attack on Kethra Station, about the Zorvith ambush during her journey home, about everything she had witnessed in Coalition space. When she finished, one of the counselors spoke. His name was Lord Rethven, and even Daniel could see that he was not friendly. "You speak highly of our Coalition allies, Princess, especially the humans." Rethven's voice dripped with scorn. "But what have these humans actually accomplished? They are a young species, barely out of their planetary infancy. They are driven by emotion and impulse. What value can they bring to the Valdorian Empire?" Valith kept her composure. "The humans saved my life, Lord Rethven. They fought and bled for me when they had no obligation to do so. One rescue does not prove the worth of an entire species." Rethven turned his gaze to Daniel. "Tell me, human, why should Valdoria consider your kind as worthy allies? What makes you different from the countless other primitive species we have watched rise and fall?" The chamber went silent. Every eye turned to Daniel. He felt the weight of his entire species resting on his shoulders. He took a breath and spoke calmly. "I will not claim that humans are the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced species in the galaxy. We are not. There is much we do not know, and we have made many mistakes in our short history." Rethven smiled with satisfaction. Then you admit your inferiority? No, I admit our youth. There is a difference. Daniel stepped forward. What I have seen in my time among the stars is that the galaxy is full of powerful empires who only care about their own survival. They make alliances when it benefits them and break those alliances when the cost becomes too high. He paused and looked around the chamber. Humans are different. We do not fight because it is logical or profitable. We fight because it is right. We protect strangers because every life has value. We sacrifice ourselves because some things are more important than survival. Ruthven laughed coldly. Pretty words. But words prove nothing. You are right, Daniel agreed. Words prove nothing. Actions prove everything. And I am willing to let my actions speak for me and for all of humanity. The Emperor raised his hand, silencing the murmurs in the chamber. He looked at Daniel with those ancient, knowing eyes. The human speaks with conviction, the Emperor said. But Lord Ruthven raises a valid concern. We need more than words. We need proof. Ruthven stood from his throne. I propose a test. Our intelligence networks have discovered a Zorvith outpost in the Kethros system. They have stolen Valdorian military data that could compromise our entire defense network. If the human truly wishes to prove his people's worth, let him lead a mission to retrieve that data. Daniel understood immediately. This was not a fair test. It was a death sentence wrapped in the appearance of honor. And if I succeed, he asked, then the Council will formally recognize humanity as valued allies of the Valdorian Empire. And if I fail? Ruthven smiled. Then you will be dead, and we will have our answer about human worth. Valeth stepped forward, anger in her voice. This is not justice. This is murder. You are sending him to die for your political games. Silence, daughter, the Emperor said quietly. But there was something in his eyes that suggested he was not entirely pleased with Ruthven's challenge either. Daniel looked at Valeth, then at the Council. I accept. The chamber erupted in whispers. Even Ruthven looked surprised. He had not expected the human to agree so easily. Very well, the Emperor said. You will have one ship and whatever team you choose. The mission begins in 3 days. The Council was dismissed. Valeth caught up with Daniel in the corridor outside. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. You cannot do this, she said. Ruthven has designed this mission to be impossible. He wants you to fail. Maybe, but if I refuse, humanity loses anyway. At least this way, we have a chance. He took her hands in his. I have spent my whole life training for moments like this. Trust me. Valeth reached into her robes and pulled out a pendant on a silver chain. It was a Valdorian bonding token, a symbol of deep personal connection. This was my mother's, she said. It marks you as someone under my protection. If anything happens to you, I will know. Daniel felt the weight of the pendant in his hand. Then he reached into his own pocket and pulled out a small crystal on a string. It was dull and chipped, but he had carried it for 20 years. You gave this to me the day before you left, he said. You told me it would bring me luck. Valeth touched the crystal with trembling fingers. You kept it. All this time. It is all I had left of you. He put the bonding token around his neck and tucked it under his armor. Now, I have something more, and I promise I will come back to you. She looked at him with all the love she had hidden for 2 decades. You had better, Danny. I did not wait this long to lose you again. The Zorvith outpost was built into an asteroid in the Kethros system. It was heavily defended, with patrol ships circling constantly and weapons platforms covering every approach. Getting in would be nearly impossible. Getting out would be worse. Daniel Carter studied the tactical display one more time. His team was small but skilled. Price, Torres, and Lynn had all volunteered without hesitation. They knew this mission might kill them. They came anyway. All right, listen up, Daniel said. We going quiet. Torres will disable their communications first. Price and Lin will cover our exit route. I will get the data core. We have 30 minutes before their patrol cycle resets. After that, we are in a firefight we cannot win. No pressure then, Price said with a grim smile. Their ship approached the asteroid using a dead angle in the sensor grid. They docked at an abandoned mining entrance and made their way inside. The outpost was a maze of metal corridors and dark chambers. Zorvath soldiers patrolled in pairs. Daniel and his team moved like shadows, avoiding contact when possible and eliminating threats silently when necessary. Torres reached the communication hub and planted his charges. With a soft beep, the Zorvath lost their ability to call for help. Communications are down, Torres reported. You have your 30 minutes, Sergeant. Daniel moved deeper into the outpost. The data core was in the command center at the heart of the structure. He encountered 2 guards outside the door and took them down before they could raise an alarm. Inside the command center, he found what he was looking for. The data core was a glowing cylinder locked in a secure housing. He began the extraction process, working as fast as he could. 20 minutes left. Back on the Valdorian homeworld, Princess Velith stood in her chambers holding her mother's bonding token. She could feel something through their connection. Fear, determination, pain. Something was wrong. 15 minutes. Daniel had the data core. He was making his way back to the exit when the alarm started. Someone had found the bodies. We are compromised. Price's voice crackled through the communicator. Hostiles converging on our position. Daniel ran. The corridors that had been quiet before were now filled with Zorvath soldiers. He fired as he moved, taking down enemies but taking hits too. His armor absorbed most of the damage, but some shots got through. He reached the junction where his team was fighting. Price was down with a wound to her side. Torres was holding the line with everything he had. Lin was dragging Price toward the exit. Go! Daniel shouted. Get to the ship. I will hold them. We are not leaving you. Torres yelled back. That is an order. The mission is what matters. Get that data core to the Valdorians. He shoved the core into Torres's hands and pushed him toward the exit. Then he turned to face the oncoming wave of Zorvath. Daniel fought like he had never fought before. He used every skill he had learned, every trick he knew. He was one human against an army, and for a few glorious minutes, he held the line. A Zorvath commander emerged from the ranks. He was massive, covered in scars from countless battles. He looked at Daniel with amusement. One human, the commander said. You think you can stop us? Daniel raised his weapon. I think I can try. They fought. The commander was strong, but Daniel was fast. They traded blows that would have killed lesser warriors. Blood dripped from wounds on both sides. The commander knocked Daniel's weapon away and grabbed him by the throat. He lifted Daniel off the ground like he weighed nothing. You fight well for a primitive, the commander said, but you die like all the others. Daniel looked past the commander at the ceiling. He had noticed the structural weakness earlier. It was a desperate gamble, but desperate was all he had left. He pulled a grenade from his belt and pressed the trigger. Maybe, Daniel said, but I am taking you with me. The explosion brought the ceiling down. The commander disappeared under tons of rock and metal. Daniel was thrown backward, crashing against the wall as the corridor collapsed around him. Then everything went dark. Far away, Velith felt a surge of pain through the bonding token. Then silence. No, she whispered. No. She ran to her father's throne room and burst through the doors. The emperor and his council looked up in surprise. I need a ship, she said. Now, the emperor shook his head. Daughter, you cannot interfere with the test. The rules were clear. I do not care about your rules. Daniel is dying. I will not let him die. Lord Ruthven smiled cruelly. It seems the human has failed. As I predicted, Valith turned on him with fury in her eyes. He succeeded. His team extracted the data. The mission is complete. But he sacrificed himself to make it happen. Is that the proof you wanted? Is human blood enough for you? The chamber fell silent. Ruthven's smile faded. The Emperor stood from his throne. He looked at his daughter, at the fire in her eyes, at the love she could no longer hide. Then he made a decision. Send rescue ships to the Kethro system, he commanded. Find the human. Bring him home. Valith did not wait for the ships. She took a fast scout vessel and flew ahead of everyone. She reached the destroyed outpost and began searching the wreckage. Hours passed. Her hope began to fade. Then her bonding token pulsed. Weak but steady. He was alive. She found him buried under a fallen beam, protected by a pocket in the debris. He was badly hurt, but his heart was still beating. Danny, she said, tears streaming down her face. Stay with me. Please, stay with me. Valdorian rescue teams arrived moments later. They pulled Daniel from the rubble and rushed into medical facilities. He woke 3 days later in a Valdorian hospital. Everything hurt. But when he opened his eyes, Valith was there, sitting beside his bed. You are an idiot, she said softly. I love you too, he replied. She laughed and cried at the same time. The council is calling you a hero. They want to give you the highest honor in the Empire. Does that mean I have to attend a ceremony? Yes, a very long and boring one. Daniel groaned, then winced as the movement hurt his ribs. Can you at least make sure I do not embarrass myself? Valith took his hand in hers. I will be right beside you. Just like I should have been all these years. Daniel looked at her with 20 years of love in his eyes. We have a lot of lost time to make up for. We have the rest of our lives. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. And I am not letting you go again. Outside the window, the stars shone bright over the Valdorian homeworld. Somewhere in that vast galaxy, humans and aliens were learning to trust each other, to fight for each other, to love each other. And in a small hospital room, two friends who had been separated by the universe finally found their way back together. The promise they made as children had been kept at last.